The assassination of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy was unexpectedly captured on film with a 8mm Bell & Howell handheld motion picture camera in Dealey Plaza on November 22, 1963, in Dallas, Texas. The footage captured was by a man named Abraham Zapruder. The imagery captured shows what happened to President Kennedy, but does not show his assassins. In stark contrast, the imagery captured on film concerning Malcolm X's murder differs from the Zapruder film. We do not see the actual shooting of Malcolm X, but we do see the actual triggermen and others who were involved in Malcolm's murder. After being ousted out of Elijah Muhammad's Nation of Islam, Malcolm formed two of his own organizations, the Muslim Mosque Incorporated and the OAAU, an acronym for the Organization of Afro-American Unity. Anticipating large crowds at his events, Malcolm's group found the perfect location, a huge complex called the Autobahn Ballroom, located in Harlem, New York. In this film, we will take a very close look at what went on inside this historic landmark and the surrounding area using a scale model. The building is now called the Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz Memorial and Educational Center, that was once known as the Autobahn Ballroom. On February 21, 1965, the day Malcolm X was murdered, some very peculiar things went on. For example, several police in uniform and out of uniform were observed in and around the ballroom, yet their visual presence wasn't on display. Only one police officer named Thomas Hoy could be seen outside the ballroom's entrance. In the past, there was always a large contingent of police outside the building. Even a visually impaired person could see that there was a dramatic change in the scenery the day Malcolm was shot. Even more disturbing was the fact that prior to Malcolm's murder, top-ranking Nation of Islam officials were holding events right inside the Autobahn Ballroom. Ads announcing these events could be seen in several issues of Muhammad Speaks newspapers. The Nation of Islam were renting out the Autobahn Ballroom, quite odd when they had their own establishments to conduct their affairs at. In their own newspaper, paper trails were being left. In charge of the kill team would be a Nation of Islam lieutenant from Newark, New Jersey's Mosque number 25, named Linwood X. Linwood entered the ballroom wearing his Nation of Islam pin on the lapel of his suit jacket. It was one of several ruses to throw Malcolm's security guards off guard. Another disturbing fact is that two of the guards who were standing at the front of the stage, supposedly to protect Malcolm, were former Nation of Islam members who were under Linwood X. They were Charles 26X Blackwell and Robert 35X Smith, former members of the Newark, New Jersey Mosque. In the midst of this madness, seated close to the stage in a booth seat, was Jean Reynolds Turner, a faithful supporter of Malcolm X. Seated adjacent to Reynolds was Malcolm's wife, Betty SHABAZZ, and her 4 small children. The insane, reckless act that was about to take place, perpetrated by the Nation of Islam, would set black people's progress back for an eternity. The owner of the Nation of Islam instructs Elijah Muhammad to remove Malcolm X from the organization. If not, he will no longer be able to fund him. Nation of Islam officials began to rent out the Autobahn Ballroom and begin to rehearse Malcolm's murder. More events sponsored by the Nation of Islam continue to go on inside Malcolm's turf. Nation of Islam members are going in and out of the Autobahn so fast, a revolving door should have been installed. In the lobby of the room is original OAAU founding member A. Peter Bailey. Bailey is the editor of the group's newspaper, The Blacklash, a very important publication that keeps organization members abreast of local and international news. Before the shooting begins, Bailey is asked by Malcolm to intercept Reverend Milton Galamison and bring him backstage. Galamison is supposed to fundraise for Malcolm's children, who lost their clothing in the firebombing of Malcolm's home on February 14, 1965. Roland Shepard was a white man who attended Malcolm X's meetings on a regular basis. Shepard was a social activist and socialist who wanted freedom for all humanity, and working for a better world is what Shepard advocated. Shepard and Malcolm knew each other by name and would always engage in brief but serious conversations whenever they saw one another. What Shepard witnessed inside the ballroom before, during, and after Malcolm's brutal assassination was enough to make the hair on the back of his neck rise and his socks roll up and down. Shepard saw Nation of Islam member William X. Bradley rise from a reserved seat, point and fire a shotgun in Malcolm's direction. Unlike the Abraham Zapruder film that doesn't reveal the identity of President Kennedy's shooters at Dealey Plaza, the footage at Malcolm X's assassination site, the Autobahn Ballroom, shows Malcolm's shooters. The person looming in the foreground in a glowing outline image with a newspaper in the left pocket of his overcoat is the person who fired a shotgun at Malcolm X. This person can be observed attempting to rescue a partner in crime named Talmadge Hayer.
My name is Uncle Sam. What's the problem? You got an issue? You want a better education for your people?
Fuck you.
You want decent jobs for your people?
Fuck you.
You want better housing for your people? Get the fuck out of here.
Wait. I want to know if I heard you right. You want an end to police brutality? We can't do that. That's how we keep the fear up. Sure, you'll get reparations until the 12th of never, till the bluebells forget to bloom, till the clover has lost its perfume, till the poets run out of rhymes, until the 12th of never. And that's a long, long fucking time. Earl Grant and Malcolm were very close. Grant was a former Nation of Islam member who resigned from the organization in 1961 because they simply had nothing for him to do. Grant's technical skills superseded selling newspapers. Both men became reacquainted when the organization suspended Malcolm for 90 days for some remarks Malcolm made about President Kennedy's assassination. During the suspension, Grant phoned Malcolm, and Malcolm was happy to hear from Grant. When the Nation of Islam refused to lift Malcolm's 90-day suspension, Malcolm decided to form up a human rights organization designed for some real action other than just selling newspapers. Malcolm didn't have to ask Grant if he wanted to join. Earl Grant came running. It was an offer Earl couldn't refuse. Finally, black folks had an organization whose leader couldn't be bribed, was no sellout, couldn't be compromised. Finally, a leader who was in it for real. A leader who wasn't being funded by someone outside of the community to mince words on freedom, justice, and equality. A leader who was an original thinker whose objective was to expose the power structure for its centuries-old mistreatment of his people by taking the international Western power structure into the world court, charging it with violation of Afro-Americans' human rights. This was unprecedented in the history of the black struggle. Malcolm's organization was growing like a snowball rolling down a snow-covered hill. Other elements, determined to see that it failed, also joined the ranks. Earl Grant was in the ballroom when the shooting started. Grant was on a telephone trying to find out if Ralph Cooper, the famous black actor, was still coming to use his popularity to raise some funds for Malcolm and his family, who didn't have a dime. More about this actor named Ralph Cooper that Earl Grant was trying to get on the telephone. White Hollywood had two very popular Coopers, like Jackie Cooper, who starred in movies like The Return of Frank James, Kilroy Was Here, Streets of New York, Glamour Boy, and many others. There was also another popular Cooper named Gary Cooper, who starred in films like The Wedding Night, Designed for Living, Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, Sergeant York, High Noon, and several others. But I'm not talking about those two Coopers. I'm talking about Ralph Cooper, the black actor. Ralph Cooper was an American actor, screenwriter, dancer, and choreographer who is best known as the original master of ceremonies and founder of Amateur Night at the world's famous Apollo Theater in Harlem, New York in 1935. Cooper starred alongside Lena Horne in the swinging musical The Duke is Tops. He also appeared with Lena Horne again in The Bronx Venus. And who could forget Gang War, made in 1940.
Why, he'd gamble anything to have me knock off right now. What's that I heard you sing about celebrating, Killer? Sure, we're celebrating. Maisie's going to star in a new show, and bands practically run out of Harlem. This is my party, Danny. For heaven's sake, me, don't.
Ralph Cooper knew Malcolm from way back in the day, long before the Nation of Islam ousted Malcolm. Malcolm now needed Cooper's support, but Cooper also knew about the Nation of Islam's rep. Cooper faced a dilemma: continue to work with imagined Hollywood gangsters on the screen, or some real-life religious gangsters roaming the streets of Harlem. What reception would Earl Grant receive on the other end of the phone trying to reach Ralph Cooper? Would there be a busy signal? Would the phone be off the hook? Or would it just keep on ringing?
Hello? Who is it? Just a moment. It's for you.
Now, who'd be calling me here? Tell him I'll be right over.
Earl Grant was on the phone when the shots rang out. Ralph Cooper never made his way to the ballroom. In Malcolm's mind, he thought he was family. Even the day this All in the Family portrait was taken, Malcolm was told he need not apply. A foreigner from Pakistan had more juice in the Nation of Islam than Malcolm. Abdul Basit Naim, a close confidant to Elijah Muhammad, was one of the select few who had a secret relationship with Elijah's man god, Master Farad Muhammad. Just like Farad, Naim was also a white Indian from Pakistan. Before, during, and after Malcolm was killed, Naim had nothing but ill words to say about Malcolm in the Muhammad Speaks newspapers. On the day of Malcolm's assassination, it was observed that various taxicabs were running interference by blocking off various street exits and tying up traffic that was designed to help the killers escape. In this crime scene footage, Malcolm's body is being taken out of the building en route to a nearby hospital. Malcolm will be pronounced dead on arrival. And though this person's back is turned, the person's anatomy fits the description of Norman 3X Butler, said to be an assailant who assaulted Malcolm X with a handgun. Butler was known to wear a gray tweed coat, black hat that he always wore tilted back on his head. Norman 3X Butler rehearsed the killing of Malcolm X inside the Autobahn Ballroom with the team from Newark, New Jersey's Moss No. 25. A New York City Police Department sergeant named Arnold Arnoff claims he was cruising down the street in a patrol car when he heard pistol shots and saw a violent ruckus taking place outside the ballroom. Arnoff said he rescued a captured person from a howling mob who were hell-bent on killing that person, who turned out to be Talmadge Hayer, one of Malcolm's assassins. Omar Ahmed was a member of Malcolm's Organization of Afro-American Unity. After Malcolm was slain, it was rumored that Ahmed, along with another man named Donald Washington, were on their way to Chicago to seek revenge against Elijah Muhammad. In the March 5, 1965 edition of Muhammad Speaks newspaper, in its editorial column, the equivalent of a wanted dead or alive poster of Ahmed in Washington was available for all Nation of Islam followers to see. Ahmed, in an effort to dispel the revenge rumor, quickly joined the Nation of Islam and received his X. Gene Simpson, a news reporter for WMCA Radio, on his day off, went to the ballroom the day Malcolm was gunned down. Simpson was seated in a front row seat when the bullets started flying. He spoke outside the ballroom on what he saw.
I was sitting in the first row when Malcolm came out. The stand had been turned over to him by the introductory speaker, and he raised his hand in the Muslim greeting, Salam Alaikum, like this, his right hand. At that point, rumbling broke out behind us, and everybody in the place naturally turned around to look. You understand that the situation was tense because of the bombing of Malcolm's house and so forth. And everybody jumped up to look, and of course, I remember a chair had been knocked over back there. And I saw two guys like looking at the floor. And then my next impression was I turned around to look at Malcolm, and I remember him saying, "Stay calm, stay cool." And I remember hearing over my right shoulder the gunfire. And then Malcolm's hand was up like that, still in the greeting and still exhorting everybody to stay calm, when he fell backwards in a dead faint. He just slumped. Everybody knew what had happened, and there was screaming and pandemonium. I hit the floor and started doing kind of dog crawl towards a rampart, because at all this time, the gunfire was still going on, you see, and I was in what would have been the range of the gunfire, and just like everybody else, the first impression was to hit the floor. So I did that and got behind a rampart, and as fast as I could, got to a phone and filed my story.
Simpson, that same day, conducted his own investigation and was warned to keep his mouth shut. Simpson received death threats and was placed under a witness protection program under police guard in a hotel.
Somebody threw some bombs inside my house.
Sheikh Ahmed Hussein is sent from Sudan to assist Malcolm in his new upgrade to traditional Islam. It's argued now that the transition may have been a downgrade in light of new revelations of Islam's racist practice towards black Africans that was not widely known in the 1960s. Hussein will be backstage when the shooting starts. Hussein confided to OAAU members that someone close to Malcolm was stealing money designated for Malcolm and his family. Also in that same backstage room was Benjamin 2X Goodman, a former Nation of Islam member who joined up with Malcolm. Goodman would later change his name to Benjamin Kareem. He will be the introductory speaker before Malcolm comes forward. Staff member Sarah Mitchell will also be backstage. Malcolm, sensing an evil presence in the ballroom, confided to Sarah Mitchell that something felt wrong that day. Mitchell did her best to comfort Malcolm before he took the stage. Women played an important role in the organization, and without them, nothing could get done. A woman who gave 100% to the organization was Muriel Feelings. A quiet intellectual and gifted writer, prayed all her life for an incorruptible, fearless leader like Malcolm. Muriel Feelings was present in the ballroom the day Malcolm was murdered. No one could forget the sight of Muriel standing in the middle of Broadway, crying out loud over the loss of her leader. Assigned by a special unit of the New York City Police Department was Gene Roberts, the undercover cop whose assignment was to join Malcolm's organization and gather any and all information that was used to destroy Malcolm and his entire organization. The special elite agency that Roberts spied on for was called BOSSI, an acronym that stood for the Bureau of Special Services and Investigations. This elite group was known as the Little CIA and the FBI. Heading up the agency was a man named Tony Ulasewicz, a man hell-bent on destroying Malcolm and his group. Ulasewicz would get Gene Roberts to deceive, lie on, spy on, and trick Malcolm and all organization members that he was down with the struggle of liberation that black people truly deserved. Gene Roberts, on the day of Malcolm's murder, would escort the killers to seats reserved for them. It would be Gene Roberts who changed the seating arrangement in the ballroom at the last minute. Gene Roberts scurried to the back of the room seconds before the shooting started. Charles Kenyatta, one of Malcolm's close associates, who was away from the group due to a suspension, decided to come to the ballroom regardless of his position. Kenyatta stepped into the ballroom when the shots rang out. Acting as Malcolm's secretary was James SHABAZZ, formerly James 67X, who would later evolve into Abdullah Razak. SHABAZZ was backstage during the shooting. Many organization members felt SHABAZZ was a double agent. SHABAZZ was in charge of Malcolm's security that was so lousy anyone could have brought a tank into the building and gotten away with it. Malcolm's security team was obviously asleep at the wheel, but still, Malcolm's killers had no right to do what they did. Many believe that the shooters brought the weapons into the Autobahn on the day of the shooting because of the no-search policy that Malcolm was maneuvered into implementing. Filmmaker Omar Shabazz's research theorizes that the deadly loaded weapons were placed in the building on the night that preceded the shooting. Charles 26X Blackwell and Robert 35X Smith was suddenly acting as rostrum guards, standing in front of the stage, supposedly to protect Malcolm. Prior to the date of Malcolm's assassination, these two were never placed on security before. The fact that both of these two men were formerly from Newark, New Jersey's Mosque No. 25 under Linwood X should have raised some eyebrows. When the smoke bomb diversion was launched, Blackwell and Smith scrambled towards the diversion, breaking security decorum. Robert 35X Smith, also known as Karate Bob, would be shot by New York City police decades later. Yuri Kachiyama, also known as Mary Kachiyama, was a Japanese American who was the only non-African American who joined Malcolm's Organization of Afro-American Unity. When Malcolm was shot down, Kachiyama rushed to the stage to assist Malcolm. Seated with Yuri Kachiyama was a OAAU member involved in the education department, public school principal Herman Ferguson. Ferguson would witness Malcolm's murder. Malcolm's personal bodyguard, who was packing his pistol, was the Afro-Cuban American Reuben Francis. Francis would return fire to Malcolm's killers, wounding at least two of them. Reuben would quickly be arrested and afterwards seem to disappear off the planet. Jimmy Breslin was a reporter who worked at the Herald Tribune newspaper. He witnessed the assassination of Malcolm X inside the ballroom on February 21, 1965. It was Breslin who initially reported in his newspaper story that the NYPD had arrested two suspects who were involved in Malcolm's murder. This was in the Herald Tribune dated February 22, 1965, an early edition of the newspaper. Without explanation, the afternoon edition of the paper of the same day suddenly changed stories to mention the arrest of only one suspect. A lingering suspicion until this very day is that Jimmy Breslin was tipped off in advance by the NYPD that Malcolm would be assassinated on February 21, 1965, and he was advised not to sit too close to the stage. Breslin sat way in the back of the ballroom, smoking cigarettes, when the murder jumped off. When questioned recently by another reporter about having knowledge of Malcolm's pending fate, Breslin had gotten very nervous and angry and jumped on the Amnesia Express, saying he didn't remember. On the day of Malcolm's assassination, Jimmy Breslin was supposed to receive an award for journalism in upstate Syracuse, New York, but decided to go hear Malcolm speak instead. Many believed that Breslin knew what was about to happen to Malcolm and knew that being an eyewitness and reporting exclusively from a crime scene of a very important historic event was much more important than receiving an award, so he skipped the award presentation. The events that took place outside and inside the Autobahn Ballroom on February 21st, 1965 are still being documented. The case is not closed. Just like the assassination of JFK, the Malcolm X assassination is not going away. SHABAZZ Productions' intent is to bring you new information whenever it's made available. Our commitment is to build on the information that's been dormant and obscured over time. Has Malcolm X's murder been tucked away as a cold case file? Have all probative investigative leads been exhausted? Recent advances in DNA technology should also prompt officials to take a fresh new look at Malcolm's murder case. From what we can see visually in this film, the forensic evidence at the crime scene speaks volumes. We urge our viewers to come forward and speak up and make available through social media any evidence that may be in your possession to help bring closure to this case.
Thanks for saving my life, for picking me up, dusting me off, making me feel like I'm living again. I'm so glad I ran into you. If I hadn't seen you, I would have been through. I was low to go, could not stand anymore. Oh, I could never repay you. I'm so grateful for all the things you've done for me. Especially listen to my problems and saving me from misery. I just want to say thank you, baby, for saving my life, for picking me up, dusting me off, making me feel like I'm living again. I'm so glad you came along. It stopped you from singing that sad song. You're the one who erased the pain. My life would never be the same. You're the very